Sheriff's Office joining us. We also have Christopher Lipinski, with Last Stand. And then we also have Emily Alt with Moms Demand Action, the Yolo County chapter, and then Pastor Bob Ballian with Bayside Midtown. So thank you all again for being here tonight. This is obviously a very tragic situation that we're talking about, one that I know each and every one of you has opinions about, thoughts about, so let's just kind of dive into it. I'll start with you, Mindy, because clearly we've unfortunately talked about mass shootings before, you and I, and I know dealing with law enforcement is a big part of this. So could you talk about a little bit how the conversation has been with law enforcement here in Sacramento County and how these play into that?
Yeah, I think with law enforcement in general, they are always very mission-minded in something like this. And so they are looking at what did the law enforcement, what did the first responders do? And so far we're hearing such great things, but it takes a toll because they are also affected. So we're not only talking about how and what they did that saved so many more lives, but at the same time, how they're going to be affected by the same tragedy.
Absolutely, and I know, Sacramento County, a large area with a lot of different community members, a very diverse area. So I know certain communities are feeling targeted here with the shooting in El Paso, Texas. And Pastor Bob, if you can just kind of chime in about the conversation in the church too, because I was just at your church yesterday and it was mentioned briefly, and I know you hear about it and you want to turn to something hopeful, but when it feels so dark and heavy, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think, as a pastor, the first response is, concern for the families that have lost loved ones, the families that have been hurt by and impacted by this, the communities that have been devastated. And so our first thought, and this is on behalf of all of our pastors and all of our congregants, is just thinking about how we can respond to the situation, how we can help the communities that have been impacted, and how we can undergird the families right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gilroy, again, not too far away from where we are. All places you least expect it. Shopping for back to school items at a Walmart, enjoying a festival, out with a couple friends. It's truly tragic. And Emily, with Moms Demand Action, I've done several stories with your organization too. So walk me through what you all are talking about in the last 48 hours.
So this past weekend, 2,000 volunteers got together in Washington, D.C. for our annual conference. And it was at lunch that we learned about the El Paso shooting. And it just put a real, it set a resolve for what we were doing and why we were all there, learning about gun violence prevention techniques. And it, made us kind of call to action while we were there. It's just really important to us to enact gun safety measures. It's nonpartisan. I feel like everybody can be supportive of preventing gun violence in all forms, whether it's mass shootings, suicide. There's all different forms of gun violence that take a toll on our society. And Moms Demand Action is very much in favor of curbing that and keeping everybody safe.
I think no matter where you stand politically,
Absolutely.
where you stand in your community, everyone here, everyone in this building, probably everyone watching our Facebook Live can agree that mass shootings cannot happen anymore. And unfortunately, we just keep seeing them happening. And so, Christopher, for you, obviously a gun owner or someone who is very familiar with guns, walk me through your stance in terms of the last 48 hours, what you have been feeling.
I think that, as everyone else does, that it's a major tragedy and that we have some healing to do. It is, I don't feel like the discussion about the firearm is what we should be discussing. I think that what we have is a violence problem. What we have is a lack of humanity, a lack of love, a lack of understanding of what violence is. I don't think that it's the firearm. I think that you could achieve just the same thing as just happened a couple weeks ago in Japan by walking in with some gasoline and a match, or putting some gasoline with chicken manure into a U-Haul, and several other things. Those are just a couple, right? So it's frustrating that it happens, that what's happening is happening. Putting your finger on it is also difficult as to how to fix that. And the national conversation is about the tool used. and that is equally as frustrating.
Right, there's a lot of people saying ban assault rifles and AK-47s. That's just a big conversation that happens almost every time that weapon is used. Kind of just, I guess, tell me, with the Gilroy shooting, we know that was one of those, and then, with the last two, so just walk me through, I guess, if you can, your perspective on that argument that keeps coming up.
So the first thing I would say is that there are no assault weapons.
Right.
Okay? By definition, a military assault weapon has a capability that the weapons that are used by civilians do not. The AR, the AK that you can buy on the shelf here or in many states without a tax stamp are geared to civilian use. The use of the word assault weapon in my community feels dishonest. Okay, first of all, the Gilroy shooter used an SKS. That's not even what's defined as an assault weapon by California state legislation. An AR is defined as an assault rifle or assault weapon, but not because of its capability. It's because of the features. So because it has a pistol grip, it's suddenly an assault something. Because it has a flash hider, which by the way, the function of a flash hider is to disperse the flame. So in a state that catches on fire a few times a year, you would think that this device was not demonized. So it's frustrating to hear assault weapon, assault rifle, assault style weapon used, high capacity. There's a lot of misinformation, right? I mean, Kevin De Leon got up and talked about 30-round caliber clips that shot 100 rounds per second, and it's all misinformation. I think that we do need to have a conversation because these things cannot continue to happen. I also believe that in order to have that conversation, people need to be educated about what we're trying to legislate. Because I think in that, we're all going to understand that it's not the tool. It's something much deeper. It's something in our society that is pushing these young men to have a total disrespect for the life of others. The guy in Ohio shot his own sister, right? And that's by accident or not, we'll never know, because he's can't be held accountable. The guy in Gilroy can't be held accountable because in a cowardly fashion he took his own life, right? So we'll never know why, and I think that plagues everyone.
Yeah, that's the question everyone's asking, right? Everyone wants to know why now, and I think for both of you, in terms of being faith leaders in our community, how do you answer that question? Because there really is no answer unless you dive in and you know exactly the mental, what they were thinking when they did this, but how do you prevent someone else from doing that in the future? So it's a question that's overwhelming, but we all are desperate to have an answer for.
I think, first of all, Craig, right? Christopher touched on something. The level of animosity right now, the level of hate right now, it's at an all-time high. Just all I have is my frame of reference. I've lived 55 long years, and I've never seen it at this point. It's at a boiling point, and there's a lot of contributing factors. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we can pinpoint it, but I do feel like there are communities that have felt like they've taken a lot for a long time, and things need to change. I'd also say this too, without being political, I'll take my pastoral hat off for a minute and just be a citizen. Just the level of rhetoric coming from our administration, coming from the top, has been difficult to watch. It is, I think it has led to some of this, and in no way would I blame the President of the United States specifically, but I do think one of the President's jobs as the President of the United States is to be a unifier and not be a divider, and I think maybe we've missed the mark there. But the hatred, it has come from many different avenues, and we're at an all-time high right now, unfortunately.
Well, and your conversation with me was about the faith of our country, and it doesn't really matter what anchor you put yourself into and what you believe. I believe there is a God, and I believe there's a God that gives hope. And so we have moved so far away of even having those kind of feelings and having that kind of spirituality. And so if the biggest thing you have in your life that draws you or dictates to you your actions is yourself, we're in a world of hurt. Because honestly, we can't gauge our thoughts to making it be the right. Our standards cannot be what gauges everybody's society's gauges. It's got to be something different. And there are some absolutes that we've taught for generations that have worked. You know, thou shalt not kill.
Right.
And all of the 10 Commandments. So I think on the faith level is our country is in a hurting place because they have no God but themselves. So we need to get back to our foundations, the roots of this country.
Yeah, but what both you were both saying is something that Jean and Julie happen to be watching right now and commenting. But Jean says people are so disconnected from one another.
Yes.
And almost that disconnection then fuels maybe confusion over the other person. Maybe that then fuels hate, you know, whatever it may be. But
Can
then,
I just make a comment about
absolutely,
something that
yeah.
you said? So we can argue semantics about what we call the weapon, but the bottom line is easy access to these weapons that cause mass destruction in a very short time, minutes. You know, tens of people were killed in minutes. So it doesn't really matter what you call it, but easy access is a problem. So hate in the wrong hands causes death. We know that. And we also know that background checks work, red flag laws work. And right now, there's a bipartisan bill in the Senate waiting to be voted on that was passed, bipartisan measure, in the House in February that needs to come to a vote, and that is H.R. 8 for background checks. And everybody can text check, CHECKS, to 64433 and ask their senators to hold a vote on H.R. 8 to have background checks. And then the other thing is having federal red flag laws so that it flags people who have shown signs of whether it's domestic violence, which is a huge piece, you know, saying that it was a shock that this shooter in Ohio would shoot his sister. We don't know the story, but the bottom line is there's plenty of data to back up that domestic violence and gun violence go hand in hand often. So there are things that we can do. It doesn't mean taking guns away from people who are legally allowed to have them, who are responsible gun owners. It's just about keeping people safer through safe gun regulation.
Well, I agree with her on that in the area of having the right people having the guns, but I know that there are a lot of people that if they would have had a CCW and had carried that gun in that Walmart, it would have stopped a lot sooner. So I'm sorry that this continues to talk about the guns because there's so much more about these stories that people are wanting to talk about, the fear that they're feeling. Can I even go to a mall right here in Sacramento?
Right.
I think there's a lot of fear conversations that I'm hearing. I have a lot of people talking about how do they talk to their children, and that's not anything about guns. It's all about what am I going to do so I don't have that anxiety or that fear? What is paralyzing me, and how do I get through it?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, but Texas has open carry, and lots of people had weapons that technically could have stopped him, and it didn't work because good guys with guns, it's a struggle. Even highly trained professionals struggle to aim correctly, and so saying that
just not true.
Saying that that if more people had guns would be the answer. We have proven data that regulations to prevent gun violence work.
We have 90% of the shootings that have happened in gun-free zones. Imagine that.
Well, we're just talking
We
about
have-
this weekend, and the
And-
bottom
and
line
the-
is
the young
both
man in
had
Gilroy
open carry.
Had his background check, and he still
He
did
went
what he
across
did.
state lines to
It
get his
doesn't
gun.
matter. He still had a background check.
He went across state lines to get his gun, so it wasn't California
Yes,
law.
ma'am.
Well,
and
in the
I-
Walmart situation, it was a citizen who was a soldier, previous soldier, that literally
Currently
had
a
his sign
soldier.
on. Yeah.
He was currently a soldier. in
And
first
he was the
army
one.
division.
Again, there are going to be trained people with guns that will always run to the gunfight, not run from it. So I don't know the situation of all those people in Walmart having concealed weapons, but I just know that good guys with having good guns literally stop this. And we saw that in El Paso. We saw that in Dayton.
Mass shootings only last until the
Somebody's
second gun
done.
shows up. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter who's holding that firearm.
Had he not had access to the gun to begin with,
How would you-
via
how would
good
you
gun
get-
laws, then he would not have done that.
And I understand what you're saying. I understand. I do. I empathize with what you're saying. But what you're talking about is when you say good gun laws, background checks, which would have stopped absolutely zero of the mass shootings. And you're also talking about red flag laws, which do nothing but rob due process from law-abiding individuals and put police officers' lives in danger. It's a direct assault on your constitutional right and your human right in this country, red flag laws. And it puts people in danger.
It's proven in states that have background checks and red flag laws
That's interesting you say
there's
that
less
because we have
gun
that here.
violence. Right.
And we just had a shooting, didn't we?
It's not perfect. No law is going to be perfect, but it certainly limits the amount.
So then you could say that criminals don't follow the law.
That is true.
And so if I could make whatever law I want, is murder illegal? Because that's what just happened, was 3 different places, mass murders. And murder is illegal, might I add. You can't bring weapons into a bar.
Yeah, but you would never say then let's stop policing murder. I mean that argument doesn't hold. Yeah, I would just say in general, a lot of people are using the mental illness argument, and I would just say if someone kills 9 people in a bar, or someone kills 22 people in a mall, mental illness is a given. So with that, when we say that the gun is innocent, I understand that, but in no other industry would we allow that. Let me just give you a terrible analogy, but say in sport, in athletics, in football, if a quarterback has an injury and he's throwing interceptions, you take the football away from the quarterback. You don't keep throwing the football. You put in another quarterback, or you start running the ball. In this case, I think it's mandatory that we do something to make it more difficult, whether or not bad guys are going to get guns or not. We have people who are armed now better than our soldiers are armed, better than our law enforcement is armed. I feel bad for the people who responded in Akron were incredible. That's almost a miracle what happened in Akron, and I want to praise them. But that's very rare, and I feel sorry for our law enforcement because our civilians are so armed.
Can I address the mental illness thing, though? We so often don't express the fact it is pure evil what those 3 did.
For sure.
Pure evil, because mental illness, they already struggle. 90%, 95% of people that have mental illness have never, ever assaulted anybody. And so to keep throwing that stigma that mentally ill people do this, there is evil that we don't address. And it had nothing to do with he wasn't thinking clearly. He was bent on hatred. That doesn't come from mental illness.
No.
Hatred comes from evil.
Timothy
Army
McVeigh
hate.
didn't have a firearm. He killed 200-something people in less than the time that any of those shooters killed the people.
So every day, 100 people die from gun violence. Every single day.
So that statistic wraps in 60% of suicides.
You're right. And
So-
that is encompassing everything that Moms Demand Action is working towards.
And I hear that. I also want to address those things. I legitimately agree with everything that's being said, except for the focus is on a tool. And that's not going to stop what's happening. It's not going to stop why we have these young men doing what they're doing. It's not going to stop. All it'll do is change the tool.
So I guess I'm here to talk not just about mass shootings, but also about other forms of gun violence. And if somebody is suffering from depression and tries to commit suicide, if they have a gun, they're 85% more likely to die
They're definitely
than
gonna be
if
more
they didn't have a
successful, sure.
gun. And so why don't we try to save 80, like you said, 70 people a day? How about we do that?
Well, one of the
Through
things that
background checks and gun regulation, safety laws.
So there's been so much dialogue about the guns, and I got a call that as many people that are killed by guns, there's twice as many that are killed by opiates. So,
Right.
I mean, we are getting off of why we're here tonight. What is the purpose for tonight is to address these shootings And I feel to be able to help the people that are there watching this today, that don't lose hope. You're not alone in where you're feeling, that don't change your lifestyle just because of these things that happen. Don't normalize the abnormal and think that it won't happen here. Don't have that complacent attitude, it won't happen to me. But more or less, we need to get our society more involved in being situational aware, anticipate, not be paranoid, but anticipate what if something happened, what would I do? Okay. And for heaven's sakes, if you have children, train them in a way that they're not scared to go to school or scared to walk in a mall, but to have that feeling that they're more empowered. Because fear will either consume you, paralyze you, or you can use it for your good and empower you. So
I completely agree with empowering to make everybody, kids and adults alike, feel like they have control over the situation, which is why joining an organization like Moms Demand Action, where we actually take action, we have concrete messages that we send, we talk to our legislators, we try to create a safer environment for our families through background checks and red flag laws. There are things that we can do rather than cower in fear.
You realize that everyone who purchases a firearm gets run by the NICS FBI backtrack system? Everyone?
It's not working, so we need background checks and red flag laws.
So the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So we should add more and more gun laws until...
You just explained what's happening. We're doing the exact same thing by not implementing gun regulation and gun safety.
Gun regulation and gun safety. The first law was in 1806. Okay, so 1776
we had very different weapons at that time.
I let you talk. I would appreciate the same level of respect. We've had the Second Amendment since 1776. Mass shootings didn't happen at the rate that they happen now, so guns aren't the problem. Adding more laws, which have been on the books since 1806 and continuing, doesn't and hasn't stemmed, stopped, or even stuttered what's happening today. So again, I would say, from my perspective, red flag laws that are unconstitutional are only going to put people's lives in danger, and they rob you of due process. Period. Background checks already happen. None of these shootings, and you can go back 7 years. Not Columbine that happened during the Clintons' assault weapons ban, not any of them. Not any law stopped those people. Not a single one. So adding more is going to do what? Chicago, no one's talking about the 50-something people that get killed every weekend.
We talk about them.
I appreciate that. And if the talk is only about the firearm, then what's that doing for Chicago? Because Chicago has very strict gun laws. California has very strict gun laws, and a young man just shot some people at a garlic festival.
So I'll go back to the Gilroy gunman got his gun in Nevada, where they have looser gun laws, and it's a well-known fact that the guns that come to Chicago come almost primarily from out of state, where they have laxer gun laws.
So criminals don't follow laws, is what you're saying.
Creating gun laws makes sense. It's common sense and gun sense to save lives, and that is the only thing we care about, is creating a safer environment for our families.
I respect your position, and I don't think it's going to change the level of anger, the level of hurt that has these young men doing what they're doing.
So by removing the easy access to the weapon, the damage can be curbed. I hear what you're saying, I really do. And nobody's trying to take away somebody's right to have a firearm. It's just that we can keep people safer by enacting safer gun laws.
So you realize that a red flag law is exactly that, right? You realize that a red flag law is somebody saying, that person scares me, and the police show up to your door without due process, remove your items, okay? And then somewhere within 3 months, you get to go see a judge.
21 days.
Okay. Somewhere within 21 days, 3 weeks.
And that can be a nice cooling off period.
For what? For someone who
somebody
didn't
who feels
like
threatened.
how I...
It's not just somebody. It's somebody that lives in your home that knows you well.
No,
yes,
ma'am.
absolutely.
It's actually teachers. It's your neighbor.
You are incorrect.
I'm not.
GVRO in California.
I'm not incorrect.
GVRO in California is for domestic partners, people who live in the same household, or law enforcement agencies. Now, somebody can go to a police officer and say, this person has firearms and I'm concerned for their safety or somebody else's, and they can go investigate. That doesn't mean they're automatically going to lose their gun, but that is a process.
Doesn't mean they're automatically lose their gun.
No.
Well, and this conversation is
Continues.
no, it's just starting. I mean, that's the thing is like Trump, made his announcement today, and other lawmakers are getting involved in this. Clearly, Moms Demand Action is all about change, and every one of you is too, right? So that's kind of I would love to hear how each and every one of you, because you touch so many people in our community every day in every single facet of what you do, no matter what that is. So I would just love to hear from each and every one of you, what is that conversation now next? What is next for the law enforcement people you talk to, for the gun owners you speak with, for people who may come in there and feel like they need to buy a gun now to arm themselves and to be protected, for Moms Demand Action, heading to the Capitol to make change, and for Pastor Bob, for people just coming to you really hurting and wanting to feel something that's hopeful, not that pain. So if every one of you can just kind of talk to me about what is next, what's that conversation next, and how are you going to spur change in the circle you are and the lives you touch?
Yeah, I'll go first. For me, it's nothing political, Madison. It's spiritual and emotional, and so the one thing I definitely agree with Christopher on is like the level of hate that's out there is the root cause, and we need to get to why so much anger and hostility is out there. For some groups, they're feeling like it's racism and discrimination. We need social justice, and we need to do everything we can do to encourage that and undergird that. But for the most part, for me, it's trying to develop unity. When people know each other, when they really know each other, some of the differences tend to drip off. Some of the differences become meaningless. When you're praying for somebody, when you're involved in somebody's life on a minute-to-minute basis, there's a whole lot more grace involved, and that's what we need here. So for us, it's providing, not just prayer, but providing a place where people can come unify. Our church is one of the most diverse churches in the country, and we're going to promote that, and we're going to promote healing, and we're going to call out evil where it exists, and hopefully our place is a safe place for everyone to come and get their healing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think just sparking that conversation in general, what we're doing here, we may not all agree.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very clear. A lot of people on here don't agree. On Facebook, maybe the most polarized place, you could argue. But again, we're talking. And I think that's the big thing here, is that if we just shut down and we're numb and we don't look at the news and we ignore it, then what are we learning? So that's my perspective, at least from the news person's perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
Emily, if you will, just again, reiterate what you all are doing, what your conversations are like, obviously as a mom as well.
Yeah, so I'm really glad to have this conversation. Even disagreeing, I think it's an important thing to do. It opens up the conversation, and it lets all of us hear different perspectives. So from my perspective with Moms Demand Action, we are galvanizing students and moms and mothers and others, as we say, because it's not just limited to moms or dads. Anybody can help in this movement. And basically, we want to create a society that is free from gun violence, and that we can all feel safe going to different, whether it's a movie theater or a mall or church or the grocery store, whatever it might be. And we do that in a legislative way. We talk to lawmakers. I just met with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department about GVRO. They're actually very happy to have it, and they're starting their training. It should keep everybody safer, law enforcement and the public, and the gun owner. I know that we don't all have to agree on that, but that is our goal, to do that. So, and we have events, we have ways to get involved, and I hope that people will join us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Christopher?
I do what I do every day, regardless of what's happening in the world around me. It's about education for me. People are largely misinformed. They largely misunderstand, and that's okay. So what we do is we look to educate people. Something I would like to say to make clear is that I understand people's perspective, but to push for some of the things that are being pushed for, it robs me of my freedom. It robs me of my passion. It robs me of feeling safe. okay? Because of my training and what I've done in my life, firearms are a part of me. I have a 2-year-old, I have a 20-year-old, and the stuff that's happening scares me just as much as it scares you. There were better men before me that said things about this, about tyranny, about giving in to fear, and what that does for who you are and your freedom. I strongly believe that firearms are not the culprit here. They are a tool used, and if it's not that tool, it'll be another tool. In fact, there's more people killed with the household hammer than with assault weapons, even still, even after this last week of tragedy. I think we need to come together as all walks of life to deal with the tragedy, to communicate, to get off of I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a this, I'm a that, and whatever you're saying doesn't matter to me. I think that is the mistake. I think that we need to be unified. And that's what I try to offer people who come in. I try to offer them information the best that I can in the time that I see them, because I believe information is power. I believe that power can be used to change perspective, to change our relationships. There wasn't mass shootings. This is a recent thing. I mean, sure, there's been some stuff in the past, right? But not to the level that we're having it, and not as acutely as it's happening. I think that's about something else.
I'm just curious if 100 people die a day from getting hit by a hammer.
Yeah, you should look up some FBI statistics. You know, I don't want to get in semantics because that's a slippery slope, and we can be fighting depending on
I was just
what you read, right?
I was just clarifying.
Okay, so check out some FBI statistics, and then maybe it makes you feel different. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. You know, it's not for me to tell you how to feel.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So we do see a unity like we haven't seen before because of these horrible, cruel, savage acts. I even hate to say tragedies because that's what the families are dealing with, but the acts themselves are horrible, heinous acts. So I don't want our families just to feel safe. I want them to be safe. And there has to be plans. They have to start thinking about situational awareness, train in that. There's a lot of classes out there for children that they make it a game so that they learn how to think outside of if something happens, what are they going to do? We had a training that for children up to 6 years old, we played 1, 2, 3. That meant that the parents would say 3, and that meant that the child had to be in hearing distance to see or hear the mom, had to see the fingers, and they were able to run back to the mom or dad within the count of 1, 2, 3. So it was a game, but actually what it was a plan that if something bad was happening, they came right to mom and dad. I just think that planning, we can't say it's not going to happen here. We can only say truly if it happens here or when it happens here. So what are we going to do? The more you empower yourself with education, with things that you can do yourself. You cannot control another person. I understand that, but you can control how you're going to respond. And that's what empowers you.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is obviously a discussion that is only going to continue. Unfortunately, let's hope that there is not another, but like you were saying, yeah, it is the new normal, if you will. Even myself, just to get a little, a little personal if you want to, but I always think about any building I go into, always look at the exit, like there's, I know there's an exit right there, you know what I mean? But unfortunately, it's just the way that I operate now. I hate that that's the reality, but that's how I operate. And clearly education being, in the news business, we are integrated with these stories and in them and want to tell them to you all because it only helps create that conversation, that communication that needs to keep going. And so, that's my perspective on it, but it's sad.
Yeah, well, parents, don't have a problem with fire drills in school.
Right.
I mean, we have fire drills and the kids get up, walk out. It is something that we just do regularly. So the days of innocence are gone. with real time and real media and everything, if you're full of anxiety, turn off the media. Let yourself just kind of detox from all of this. But this is a great opportunity to step forward and say, what can I do for myself and my family?
Yeah.
As a mom
absolutely.
and a former teacher, I'm just going to say that the active shooter drills for children have been proven to traumatize them. It's really not actually helpful. It's traumatizing. So I understand the desire to prepare them, but I guess that's kind of where Moms Demand Action comes in. We want to actually make it so that they don't have to worry about that. So that's why we want to go to legislature and we want to talk about the laws and change that for our kids so that they don't need to be, it's not that we don't want them to feel safe, we want them to be safe as well. We want both to feel and be safe. And I don't think active shooter drills is what we need. I think we need to talk to our lawmakers and get them to put a vote on H.R. 8, an already nonpartisan bill, and create changes at the legislative
Do you
level.
think that's more traumatizing than watching other children die? Active drills,
Who's
fire
watching?
drills.
And I don't know where
My
your
kids aren't watching
statistics are.
people die.
As a
No,
crisis
hopefully
responder,
not, yeah.
we have seen over and over again, and it is not a traumatic thing because they're not chased by guns or any of that. It's very low key, lockdown,
Well, maybe the
stay
ones you
and put.
do.
But not in California, because I work with the crisis teams in this. So I'm just saying there are a lot of people out there that have their opinions about everything. But the fault to us is not better preparing our families and friends. The fault lays on us. Our responsibility is to, in suicide, be responsible for one another, for being able to see what is going on and help not only ourselves but one another.
And
Why not
limit easy
take-
access to
Why
guns.
not take classes on first aid? Why not
Exactly.
reinstall gun safety and gun education in schools just like sex ed and driver's ed? Because that used to be a thing. Why not, instead of trying to demonize a tool, educate on that tool and how to properly use that tool and how to properly
So-
respect that tool so that we can respect each other while using that tool?
I think you misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not demonizing guns. I'm just trying to make them not as accessible to the people who shouldn't have them.
Right. I hear
Criminals.
what you're saying.
Right.
But again,
That break the law
criminals
anyway.
don't follow law.
Right.
Look at Mexico, look at Chicago,
It's not
look
just
at
criminals.
anywhere. Matter of fact, again, these last shooters, murder is illegal. So it wouldn't matter if they walked in with a hammer or an ice pick or an ice cube or whatever, okay? It was still an evil act. And taking away the tool doesn't change why they
person,
did
yeah.
what they did or what they did. And that's what we need to be focusing on, in my opinion. And I respect what you guys do. My mom was actually a member of MAD once upon a time, not long ago.
That's Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
I understand that. I understand what that is, yes, ma'am. I bring that up to draw kinship, to let you know that I'm not against you. We just don't agree with how to fix
I hear you.
what we're talking about. That's all, you know.
It's a big question too of how to prevent this from happening, and every little facet is a layer, and it just gets overwhelming at the end of it all. And I think what you were saying too about the I found this super helpful. So if anyone's watching can get into one of them, maybe you all offer it, I'm not sure, but the triage training, like how to help someone if they have been shot, what can you use in your, unfortunately, in your classroom, in your whatever it may be. I'm not wearing it right now, but I learned that my lanyard could be a tourniquet. I had no idea. You know, so things like that are so tangible and so helpful in a situation where you never think you may be in. So I don't know if you all offer that, but that is a tool that I feel like I really learned something from. But again, there's so much to talk about when it comes to this, and I know a lot of people are chiming in, pretty much just, obviously agreeing with things that have been said, but talking about how we have the power to, this is from Cheryl, we have the power to change everything, love listening, being open to listen to each other before this happens again. And that was my goal here tonight, is to just get members of different communities that all touch a lot of people in different ways with this conversation, and get you all to talk, because that's important, I think, for us to share and for people to chime in. So I do appreciate, I know we don't all agree on everything, but it's a productive conversation given the heinous acts like you're talking about that we have seen, and hopefully we won't have to see those again. Any final thoughts?
Can I
Yeah,
finish how I
absolutely.
started, Madison? There's a lot of ways for unity to happen by just helping out, again, the people that are in need. So people like Mindy needs more volunteer chaplains. There's a huge need for that, and you can jump in and help our law enforcement that way, and I'm sure the law enforcement communities across the country. At church, we're in conversations with churches in El Paso and in Akron, and so there's going to be ways that we'll be promoting how we can help some of the families and some of the communities there. So again, that's another way to like jump in, be a part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Right.
I hope a lot of people jump on board with that.
Absolutely. I think every one of you has something to offer in terms of getting other people involved who are curious about something.
And to be a part of Moms Demand Action, along the same lines, they can text READY to 64433 and get connected with an organization, a group in their area. It's in all 50 states. We have 3 groups just in the capital city area alone, Folsom, Sacramento, and Yolo, and then all throughout California and across the country. So I encourage people to get involved.
Yeah. And Christopher, for you, how do people get involved?
I would say everyone has a fire extinguisher. It's not because you run around looking to put out fires
Right.
or can't wait to fight a fire. But it's a measure of first response and responsibility of yourself. If you have questions on firearms or safety of firearms, or if you just have general questions on situational awareness, come find us at Last Stand, because that's what we do. We help people understand those things. We sell medical supplies as well. That's so that you're able to use a tourniquet or a chest seal or a decompression needle. You don't have to be an EMT to save someone's life.
Right.
And you don't have to be a bad person to carry a firearm either.
And mine would be encouraged. I know some people have demonized our thoughts and our prayers are with you. Keep on praying. Keep on thinking clearly, because our thoughts have to be clear-minded before we can ever do anything. And then our prayers do change things. And for those of you that will never go to El Paso or never go to Dayton, what can you do? So once you go to prayer and seek wisdom, you can find a lot of different ways to help and support. Like Pastor said, we can be a part of the support right here in Sacramento. So let's get active by unifying and doing things that we can do to help our country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have a personal responsibility too in the media. You all know that watching, and please keep us accountable. I'm not really sure which camera to look at, I think 2, but keep us responsible because and accountable, because it's important to us. We want to hear from you. Chris and I, we would like for you to send us messages on things we're covering. The more we hear from you all, the better we can be. Even though we just do the news, but we definitely care about this for sure, and it matters a lot to us. And so we just, again, are focusing on the victims here. We're not showing the picture of these shooters. We're not saying their names. That is something ABC 10 really strives to do in these situations. So that's just, one little facet of my responsibility. But anyways, I appreciate all of your time. I think we definitely went a little bit long. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for watching. If you have more questions or comments, please chime in. This lives on Facebook, so it'll continue there. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.